Hey guys, my name is Jared and I'm here with James.
And my name is James, and I'm here with Jared.
And today we are going to be talking about the Bible. Is it still trustworthy?
I love the Bible. What a great topic.
Yeah.
Yeah, is it still trustworthy? Of course it's still trustworthy. But why is it still trustworthy? Why
Yeah.
was it trustworthy to begin with?
Yeah.
Where you
'Cause-
at?
I don't know. It's an old book, bro.
It's so old.
Yeah,
It's
like-
so old.
We talk about the New Testament, which is like the Gospels and Jesus and Paul and all these things. That was written, 2,000 years ago?
Yeah.
And the Old Testament, more than that.
Well, so much more.
Yeah. So,
Plus, it's crazy when you look at it. But the Bible's come under a lot of like scrutiny.
yeah,
I mean, not lately. Let's just be real about this.
always.
Forever,
Yeah.
It's been under a lot of scrutiny because it's a historical document, and so figuring out like, is the history of this real and all that stuff. So you
Yeah.
go back to like early and original manuscripts, which I think this topic is fascinating. I could geek out about this. Well, looking into it, when you look at like Greek manuscripts of
Mhm.
Scripture, there are so many Greek manuscripts of the New Testament. So much so that if you took all the different like Greek manuscripts that we have and you stack them on top of each other, you'd get a stack of paper about a mile high.
Whoa.
It's this massive, massive book and manuscripts and everything, which
It's a lot
is
of paper.
unlike any other historical document. Like no
Okay.
other document in all of history has as many original manuscripts as Scripture. Like even if you were to look at the works of, I think, Homer, or
Like Plato.
Plato, yes.
Yeah.
If you were to look at the works of Plato, there's 20 original manuscripts, which makes about a 4-foot stack. So
Shorter than me.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's not a very impressive stack of paper. And then if you were to add the Old Testament into that, you're talking about a stack of paper that reaches like to the moon, I think is what the current thing is.
So that's a lot of paper.
It's
And-
so much. Well, papyrus and all that good
So it's thicky paper. Yeah.
It's super thick paper.
Yeah.
The Bible also did something really interesting that no other historical document did, is papyrus was typically just written on one side.
Yeah.
They're like, oh man, this is kind of a waste. Let's write on both sides.
It's a mile high,
Oh,
but it's
dude.
written on both sides.
They're rebels. They're
Dude.
rebels. So it's crazy how much information that there is. But the thing that always like interests me about this, and I've heard this argument a few times, is there's so many like textual variants in the New Testament.
Okay, textual variants. That's a big word. What does that mean,
All
dude?
right. So a textual variant is when you look at a couple different original manuscripts, the words
Okay.
are different.
So like the original writings, and
Yeah.
the words are different on
Yeah.
different ones.
So it's like, and then Jesus said, blah, 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 blah.
Yes.
But if you have a manuscript that just says, then Jesus said, and you leave out the and, that's a textual variant.
Oh.
If
It's
you have,
different.
then like the difference between a and, just some of these like little tiny things that change language and how it's written and how it's said,
Okay.
it's technically a textual variant.
Okay.
I think in our New Testament, there are 3 textual variants that would actually change the meaning of the sentence, which is
Oh.
like, there's some debate over Gehenna and if people are thrown in Gehenna or cast out into Gehenna or what that even means, or are they thrown into Gehenna or are they thrown into hell? Because those are also 2 different kind of concepts that are happening there. as
Okay.
well. So, but there's only 3 in all of our New Testament that would actually change the meaning.
So there's a ton of these different variants that you're talking
Yes.
about, but there's only 3 that would actually change the meaning of the sentence.
Yes, and none of it is like a big doctrine.
Okay.
It's almost like do people like get cast in Gehenna or do they get cast into hell? And what's the difference there?
Yeah, I don't
Um,
even know what Gehenna is.
Oh, you want to go there?
No, I don't know.
Real quick. Gehenna was this place outside of Jerusalem where people would take trash, but it actually Gehenna gets its roots, and it was this place that was it was a dump, but before that it was a ritual site for other religions. And so like the forerunning popular commentary says that it was a trash heap. There's actually, I recently learned, no physical evidence of it being a dump site.
Okay.
Of it being trash. It really became and was this huge like sacrificial site for false gods. It also kind of turned into this place where bodies were buried and burned. So in the New Testament and in someone living in Jerusalem, they would know Gehenna as this like spiritually evil place with like burning bodies, fire, gross. No one wants to go there.
So it's kind of this like picture of hell.
So it's this miniature picture of hell. Yeah,
Okay.
is what it is. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff that comes from that, but it's this little picture.
Hmm.
But how you understand that can maybe change how you view hell.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
ultimately, like it's not like Jesus saves. It's not
Yeah.
that level of doctrine.
Yeah.
And so these 400 textual variants really add up to being not anything that big.
Hmm.
Even if you look at Shakespeare's got an equal amount of textual variants in it, but we believe the words of Shakespeare, even though we don't have any original manuscripts of Shakespeare. All we have from Shakespeare's writing is printed press material from
Okay.
Shakespeare. So I don't know. We can trust the Bible because of that. We can trust the New Testament because of that. And Old Testament, there's a whole lot of other stuff to it. We could trust the New Testament and the Scripture to be the Scripture because we have original manuscripts dating 60 years to the life of Jesus. So like Jesus lived, and then 60 years later, we have the first manuscript of Jesus' life.
60 years still feels like a long time. Why is that a big deal?
60 years it does feel like a long time because
Yeah.
I'm not 60.
No, you're not.
Yeah. So
You plus me, it's not 60.
that's true. Because in other historical documents, we're not talking about decades. We're talking about hundreds of years.
Really?
Yeah, so I don't know. Looking into it, it's fascinating. So Alexander the Great, who we all know, Alexander the Great, we all have read about what he's done. He's done some crazy things. He conquered, the known world and made Rome huge.
Yeah.
The closest manuscript we have of Alexander's life,
Yeah.
so like recounting what he did to his life, is 1,000 years from his life.
So it was like written 1,000 years after he was alive?
Yeah, here's how I picture it. Okay, let's pretend. Let's not actually do this. Let's just pretend that I punched you in the face right now.
Again? No.
and someone, we weren't on camera, but someone was watching and they wrote down, oh my gosh, I was in this place and this dude punched this other dude. His name was Jared and he took it like a man.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Only cried
cool.
a little bit.
They'll embellish the story for you. And then that person wrote it down, and then someone read about this story, and they thought it was cool, and they wrote it down, and they wrote it down, and they wrote it down. And then long after we're dead, 1,000 years later, someone reads this story of like, hey, look there was this dude James, and he punched this dude Jared, and Jared took it like a man. Or it's changed significantly. Maybe they say you crumbled like a glass jaw. Let's go with that. Is that the actual truth? And they would have no way of knowing because they're 1,000 years removed from the original actual event. Not so with the New Testament. We're 60 years removed. There's still eyewitnesses around when we have original manuscripts. In fact, 150 years from the date of Christ, we have the entire Gospels as manuscripts of like. It just goes to show that the Scriptures are trustworthy, not simply because they say they're trustworthy, although that's a big deal, but because the historical evidence points to the fact that they are the most documented, most manuscript, most truth-telling, rigorous historical document we have in existence. And so it's fascinating when we read what we're reading, that we know we're reading about like the life and ministry of Christ and what he did in the early church. So it's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, and we can trust that it's true.
I really like that we can trust that it's true. It is this assurance of knowing, like, I'm not speculating in this. This is what Jesus said. This is what happened in the church. It gives me confidence. It also, like, unites me with the church of the past and knowing, we do church very, very different from the early church and from, like, the Acts. But also, like, we're following the same God, and that God hasn't changed. So it's a wonderful thing.
Dude, so you answered some of the questions of like, is the Bible still trustworthy? But there's probably so much more that goes into, is the Bible still trustworthy, that we can't cover in 10 minutes of a conversation.
No way. We like scratch the iceberg. We're like tip of the iceberg.
Is there other resources that we could look at to find more information on the trustworthiness of the Bible?
Yeah. Off the top of my head, I don't have them. So
we could probably put them in the
We'll find
the
them and put
comments.
them in the show notes.
Yeah, the show notes.
There's a couple great. There are people who dedicate their lives to textual criticism and understanding the Scripture and the Scriptures as a historical document. We went to a conference recently in which this guy was like debating not like the NIV versus the ESV, but like one version of manuscript versus another version of manuscript, and being like, look, there's a textual variant here, and the date is like 100 years apart from each other. So
that like went super over my head.
I could barely keep up, but just barely. And so there's a ton of incredible trustworthy resources
Hmm.
of people who love the Lord and who want to see us with the most accurate version of the Bible that we could possibly do, which they're doing a killer job of making that happen.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So there's so much more we could talk about, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the Bible next week. But we're going to wrap up here, and we're going to have some resources for you guys in the show notes. So thanks for joining us. This has been Connection and Conviction. We'll see you guys next week.
see ya.